As long as you are the only voice for your child, the struggle will be harder and the length of time waiting for change will be longer. A small group of parents of children with disabilities can easily be dismissed by boards of education and administrators and seen only as this special interest group. I think we have to stop looking at inclusion as only for students with disabilities, because it really is about creating change for each and every child sitting at a desk in our country. So today we're going to focus on 3 ways to help you as you continue on this journey advocating for inclusive education for all. Now, we can kind of go into a certain amount of depth on our live weekly shows, but we go into much greater depth in topics like this in our private membership group. So if you would like more information to join us as a Parent Advocate Trailblazer, just type the word group in the comments below, and my IEP bot will, let's see, there we go. My IEP bot will send you a message. You type group again, and you'll get the link. So before we jump into 3 ways, and I think some of these might be new ways of you looking at the topic of inclusion. Before we jump in, if I haven't met you, I'm Charmaine Thaner. I'm a parent, retired teacher, both special education and general education. And now I'm a full-time advocate, and I help families like you advocate for their child. So there is this place where we need to know specific things about our kids with disabilities. However, I really think we can impact change in a greater way and in a quicker way when we pull together and we have larger groups of parents. We know from history that large groups of parents can have a great impact. I mean, it was parents that helped create that first federal law allowing our children to actually go through the public school door. So let's take what we've learned from the past and what's been successful and see how we can make sure that we use that same kind of strategy now, because I think it's still going to be really helpful when we have a wider circle of people working with us. So if you're here with us live, say hi so I can greet you. If you are watching the replay, you can just type the word replay. Make sure that I come back and answer any questions and comments. And if you are have questions and comments during our live show, please feel free to type them in. Lissa's here. So, hey, Lissa. She lives up in a northern part of Idaho. And so I don't know, Lissa, if you guys have gotten any new snow lately or not. But let's look at those 3 ways. So the first way that I think is really important is to find like-minded souls. And this is, I'm trying, it's like we have to go and find more allies out there. We can't keep doing this alone or one small group of people at a time. So as we're finding like-minded souls, you want to look in a variety of areas. Now, this could be where you look at other parents that you know in your child's school, and you talk to them about maybe some positive changes that could happen. Another place to look for some allies to be with you are colleges. So if you're in a college town, look for college professors, look for college students that are interested in having a positive impact on public education. And ideally is that we want more than just us as parents of kids with disabilities to be out there speaking up for inclusive education. Because to me, when we have inclusive education for everyone in our classes, then students are going to be able to have teachers use channels of their strengths and their learning styles to present information. Students, like your child, is going to have a way to show what they already know, to show what they've learned. There's going to be expectations that your child is learning. And then the third thing that I really want to see for all of our classes and all of our students is that kids are actively engaged and motivated and excited about learning. There's so many ways that we can bring in their strengths and their interests and their gifts and really tap into that and help them to be more engaged in what they're doing and actually seeing it as meaningful learning education. So when you find allies, like I said, it could be from other parents, it could be friends and neighbors. What you want to do is expand your group so you go beyond parent support groups, you go beyond just kind of connecting with other children or parents of kids that have disabilities, because when we're a larger group, we can do more, right? So one of the things that I talked about was, if you're a small group of parents at a school board meeting, you can be easily dismissed and seen as only a special interest group. Well, the thing is, you can do other things at school board meetings that are really meaningful. Now, I know as a teacher, pretty much if you would go to a school board meeting when there's not a controversy about the football team or something like that, when you would just go to kind of a quiet school board meeting, most of the people in the audience are going to be required people to be there, like principals and other administrators. And maybe a local reporter from a newspaper. But there's usually not parents at school board meetings unless there's some, really controversial topic or something that they're really interested in. So what I want you to do is in your group of allies, you can break up and say, okay, the three of us are going to go to the February school board meeting. Then you four are going to go to the March school board meeting. So you divide up the tasks so it's not overwhelming, but you can find out so much information at school board meetings. So when you just have a few people sitting there, the school board is going to take notice. Probably during a break or before or after the school board meeting, some of them will come over and introduce themselves to you. So this strategy that you're going to do with your allies is just to start making relationships with the administrators, with the school board members. This is not a tactic that can work down the road when you have a large group of parents going to a school board meeting for some issue. But right now, with your group of allies, you want to show the school board that you're interested in what goes on in the district. You're not just concerned about my child and how my child is getting treated, but you really want to see your whole district flourish. And this can be like really, really helpful. So let me check here. Lisa says no, that all their snow has melted. So that first strategy, make sure that you can go out and find a group of like-minded people. And sometimes the further away from the disability community they are, the better it is, because we want to show the district that this, as far as the education that we want for our children, is not just a single parent issue. It's an issue that lots of parents are committed to, celebrating what's going well with the district and working on some other things that need to change. So hopefully that makes sense. Jen is here. Hey, Jen, how are you? So we were just talking about some different ways, kind of a change in our mindset to work on inclusive education. Now, the second one may sound a little strange, but our second strategy is to think like a marketer. Because when you are advocating for inclusive education for every single student, not just kids with disabilities, you are going to have to influence other people. And in order to do that, you really need to think like a marketer. Now, you may be like, I'm having trouble enough trying to figure out the special ed process. Now you also want me to be a marketer? But that's some of the things that we jump into and go deeper into our private membership group. So again, if you're interested, just type group in the comments. But yeah, think like a marketer. So let's talk about just a couple easy examples that we can look at. So as a marketer, as a parent trying to influence change in your district, it's always important to start with a story. Okay, because you first want to appeal to people's emotions, have a connection between you and the other person, the other group of people. And we do that in our culture through stories. So instead of just jumping into what are the benefits of inclusive education, you're going to share a personal story when you speak. So this could be at an IEP meeting. It could be at a school faculty meeting. It could be on a district-wide accountability committee meeting. It could be when you're talking to the clerk that's your friend at the grocery store. Have a short story that you can say, that you can explain about why we need to celebrate what's working well in public education, but also how it's going to impact your child when we have some changes made. So see if that makes sense. Nancy's here. Hey, Nancy. Nancy's in Colorado. So we got Colorado and Washington and Idaho. We're getting kind of the Northwest group here. And again, if you're watching on the replay, type questions, comments, because I come back and answer those. So the other thing, as far as thinking like a marketer, is to also think about the different stakeholders that you're going to have conversations with. And as a marketer, you need to tweak sometimes your story or tweak some of the information that you're going to share with people. So for instance, what do you think school board members might be most kind of worried about when they hear that there's a large group of parents that want to have more inclusive education in their district? So type in the comments, what do you think school board members would be worried about when they hear that I inclusion word? So I'll give you a minute to type that in, and I'll check and make sure we have caught everybody's comments. So if you think of school boards of education, they're, like the highest level of kind of the, leadership level in a school district, even though probably above them, of course, are the voters, the community. But if you look at the school board level, Jen says that they might be worried about how other parents feel about this. Yes. And let's talk about each one of these. Lissa says school board members might be more concerned about budget. Absolutely, right? And here Jen was saying they might also be thinking of money and other resources. Like, what else is this going to take for us to pull this off, right? Nancy says safety. Yes. I mean, those kinds of basic things. And the school board might think, we don't want to be vulnerable and put ourselves in a position of being liable, if things go wrong. So when you're talking to school board members, all of these kinds of things, safety, budget, other kind of resources, what other parents think. All of these things you want to make sure you can address before you go in and have a conversation with a Board of Education person, right? And this, Jen, I think your comment is really goes along well with our first step is finding allies, because if we, as parents of kids with disabilities, go as a small group to a board or to, essential administrators and ask for change, then they say, well, what about the other parents? But if a larger group of parents, if a larger group of allies come together, community people who don't have kids with disabilities and see the benefits of some positive change in their school, then you have more credibility and you're more likely to create change. So that is like really important. Yes. And so Erica's with us. Hey, Erica. And she says, yes, money. I mean, that's probably going to be the school board's number one issue. And so then with your group of allies that you formed in step one, you've got to start looking at that. See if you have somebody who is more of a, math kind of person that can look at school budgets. I know when I was a teacher and negotiating for our Teachers Association, it was amazing the pockets of money that we could find in different places in the budget that could be reallocated. So that's why you want to do this with a larger group of people. We don't individually have all this knowledge and expertise. The more people we can bring together, the greater, the skills and the expertise that we have in our group, and we can start to look at how to address these things. So let's look at another stakeholder. Let's look at more like central administrators or building administrators. So I'm kind of messing up my stuff here, but if board people are, concerned about safety and money and resources and what other parents think, let's look at people like superintendents, the director of special ed, building principals. So kind of coming down to another level. And you could almost kind of distinguish between superintendent and special ed director, and maybe principals are another, body of stakeholders. But more administrators, what do you think? Type in the comments. What do you think building principals, special ed directors, superintendents, are they going to be looking at this in another way, not maybe as much as money, safety, what other parents think? Is there going to be something different that they're going to bring up that as a marketer, you need to know ahead of time? So I will give you a minute. Thanks for playing along here with us. I think it helps, it would be wonderful if we could be together in the same room and just have this back and forth conversation. So instead of that, typing in the comments is a great way that we can have this conversation going. So what do you think? So, look at this. This is a great idea. So Erica says training. Yes, right? Erica knows this firsthand, that when teachers don't have appropriate training, it's really hard for them to implement things like universal design for learning. So the principal, the director of special ed might be like, wow, if we start doing this inclusive education with everybody, wow, we got to think about how we can bring our staff into the loop and make sure that they have that training. Jen says that the administrators might be thinking about pushback from teachers and other staff. We're already doing so much. Yes. I remember sitting in many a teacher meeting where at the beginning of the year, it's like, this is the new spelling curriculum we're going to be using. So, sign up for the workshops about using the new spelling curriculum. Or a few minutes later, well, now we're adding this new reading program, but we want to get your feedback. So we're going to ask you to test these different reading programs. I mean, yeah, it's like they're inundated. And of course, special ed teachers are like, I have enough stuff to do, especially paperwork. Lisa says staff ratios. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So do you see, these are the objections that you're going to probably be met with, the roadblocks, right? And so as a marketer, you want to identify what these roadblocks are going to be and how you can respond to them. So Nancy says that the administrators might be more concerned about time, how to fit it all in. Exactly. I think when we ask for, this is another layer. Now, each quarter you have to teach about bullying. And now we have the school counselor saying, no, we also have to do this. And, now we've got these standards that we have to make sure we meet. And we've got to do the practice tests. I mean, it's like, if we look at this initiative of more inclusive education for every single student, it can't be an add-on. What I'm really looking for is that we look at a framework like Universal Design for Learning, and that becomes the basic floor of how we operate in our building, in our classrooms. And we're going to be talking about that more in the coming weeks. But yeah, you guys have great ideas here as far as what administrators are going to be thinking and talking about. So that's where putting on your marketing hat is going to be really helpful. And as I said, like in our private membership group, we can go through and have lots more deep discussion. Erica and Lisa are in our Parent Advocacy Trailblazer group. So yeah, let's keep the conversation going here. And then in our group, we can also dive in a little bit more. So as a marketer, you're going to want to make sure that you have a story to tell, because that's what is going to hook your connection with other people. You need to make sure that you have different messages depending on the stakeholders that you're talking to, okay? And another group that we haven't mentioned are teachers. So let's look. We've done school board members, we've done administrators, teachers. How about teachers? What do you think some of the objections or some of the worries or some of the concerns that teachers might have about, like, what? Inclusion for everybody? What do you think that what kind of reactions, what kind of possible objections? Type those in the comments and let's see. From a teacher level, what do you think the teachers are going to be saying? And I'll get a drink. So Erica says, in her experience, mine had power struggles. And I think that also goes with, Erica, what you're saying about the teacher training, because when we look at all the kids in our general ed classes, not just including kids with disabilities, but kids that speak a different language, kids that are of another race, another culture, they also have been marginalized and discriminated and segregated against historically in many different ways in our schools. So it's not just going to be about training or power struggles with kids with disabilities, but it's going to be like looking at all my 29 unique kids in my class, right? And so for some teachers, like Jen says, it's like, what? I'm not a special ed teacher. And that is like a really, really common fear, right? It's like, I didn't go to school to be a special ed teacher. You're the special ed teacher. These are your kids, right? So if we have that kind of culture in our building, it's going to be a challenge, right? We're going to have to change that culture. And I think when we bring basic frameworks like differentiated instruction or universal design for learning, multiple intelligences, all those kinds of things, if we look at that, that's good for every student. The other thing I think that helps teachers is to understand that when we're asking for some new ways of doing things in classrooms, it's not that we don't appreciate the wonderful gifts and strengths that teachers have and what they have brought. So just like we want teachers to recognize our kids' strengths, as a marketer, you want to recognize the strengths of the teachers and make sure that you always start conversations with what you are grateful for, what you are thankful for, what the school is currently doing that is working well. Now, sometimes we have to search hard to find those little things, but it could be, your secretary is so welcoming every time I come in the building. She's always smiling and greeting visitors. I mean, it could be that, right? So we want to form more trusting relationships with the staff because we want the staff to understand that when we look at making sure that we address students' strengths and their learning styles, that we have multiple ways for them to show us what they've learned, that we keep them engaged and motivated, that when they learn to do that, that not only works for general education, it also works for kids that have been typically marginalized. So now, instead of having this silo of special education and this silo over here of general ed, we're blending that together and saying, good teaching is good teaching. And then the other worry that I hear from special ed teachers is like, I won't have a job, but that's not true. We still need special educators, and that's where the co-teaching part comes in. And Jen is saying another thing is I can differentiate, I cannot modify everything. And that's where, and that's excellent, Jen. And that is something that people are saying right now and will continue probably to say, right, is that they know how to tweak things a little bit, but really modifying it to a level where the student can be successful, that can be hard. So what we want to do is see about the special ed teacher and the general ed teachers having collaborative planning time together so they can work together. I mean, sometimes it's like, it's over your lunch, or sometimes it's a half an hour before school starts. But I think people really need to have that weekly collaboration time. And then as you start showing examples to the general ed teachers of how things can be modified, that is like on-the-job training that is like so priceless, right? So that's a really good thing to do. So Jen says the student is so far below grade level. And that's, one of those myths that only kids can be included if they're close to the grade level. But the reality is, as a classroom teacher, you already have a range of kids in your class. So you're going to have kids that are exceeding those grade level standards, and you've got to have a way to challenge them and keep them engaged and motivated. And you're going to have students that are not at grade level. Now, I know for my son, there was a pretty wide gap, but he was successfully included. And that's because we had a great team of teachers and that trusted parents, and that we could together bounce ideas off of each other and get modifications done. And modifications is like one of my favorite things to do. If I could like find a job where I could just sit all day and do modifications of assignments and stuff, I would love it. So that's one of the things that I offer people in our group is if you've got worksheets that need to be modified or an activity that needs to be modified, post that in our private membership group. And I would be happy to look at other ways that we could modify that. So we've done 2 strategies so far. We've done, the first one is to find other like-minded souls to, build a larger group of allies that will work for inclusive education, especially other parents that don't have kids with disabilities. And then the second strategy was think like a marketer, have a story, have different kind of messages that you can share with different stakeholder groups. Our third strategy is to join what's there. So many times I see parents of kids with disabilities deciding, oh, we need this. Our kids can't do this, so we're going to form this group. Or, we need to have this special PTO group just for parents in our school that have kids in special education programs. And I really encourage you not to make different new parent groups. I really want you to join what's already there. So example is the PTA. There are parents that, with good intentions are saying, the PTA doesn't really represent who we are, so we're going to have a separate group. And I'm not saying with all of this large group and looking at more than just kids with disabilities, I'm not saying that we don't have a place for parent support groups and, learning specific things about IEPs and the law and advocacy. We still will have a need for that. But the more we can do, and this kind of goes along with our first step about finding allies in other ways and other areas, is the more we can be seen as a parent that's really concerned about education for everybody, the more connections we'll make and the more allies we'll create. So, for example, with a PTA or a PTO, if that's what your school has, I know when I was a teacher, like one of the big things that our PTO would do is have a book fair twice a year. Well, as a parent of a student with disabilities, that would be a great committee for you to join. Now, you're like, well, I don't really care about the book fair, but you want to kind of heighten people's awareness. So if I was on the book fair committee, one of the things that I would want to make sure is wherever the book fair is, that it's accessible for kids. So if you have kids in your school that use wheelchairs or walkers, are you doing the book fair in the library and it's got a couple steps down to this, storytelling pit area, and that's where the book fair is? Well, is that going to be accessible? Or another accessibility thing for book fairs is, how high are the shelves that are displaying the items? Another thing for book fairs is how many books do you have that are in different languages? So if you have a number, of students in your building that speak Spanish, do you have Spanish, storybooks at the book fair? So I want you to bring your expertise, and I want you to add that to the richness of committees and groups that already exist, instead of saying, oh, we have to have this special needs PTO group. So does this make sense? And let me know, I don't know if, if you guys have active PTOs or PTAs or other kind of parent organizations at your school or not. Let me know in the comments. I know as our kids get older, then it seems like there's less, parent involvement in school issues. Sometimes more middle school and high school parents are more interested in the activity level. But again, I mean, whatever your area of interest is, see about being on a committee. Usually committees are looking for parent representatives. So a lot of districts will have a district level accountability committee. Sometimes they're called by different names, but see about that. Or there's committees about school boundaries. And then, you can have topics about, what is the diversity going to look like in our schools, and how can we encourage that each school in our district has diversity, and that we're not just busing kids to one location. So you can bring your voice, but you're going to be doing it on a larger committee, and that can make a difference. So if any of this is making sense, give me a thumbs up or a love in the little emojis there. Jen says, she says, I'm secretary of my son's PTSA, so the parent teacher student. I have lots of opportunities to be involved and also check in on how my son is doing. Excellent. Yes. Because even if you're in the building for another activity, like, you're setting up the book fair, or you're helping the music teacher for the choir performance, when you're in the school building, there's like so many little things that you can pick up and notice. You can kind of casually drop by and see how your child's doing. You can see them in the lunchroom or going out to recess, but being involved at the school level and showing that you're willing to commit to the whole students or the whole school's mission about how we help every student be that lifelong learner, right? That gives you like so much credit in your karma bank account that really helps, So Jen is saying, all of this makes sense to me. Good. Okay, cool. So I just think it's an incredible time, and that we have an opportunity to start going beyond special education when we talk about inclusion and inclusive education. So one of my passions and my mission, I guess, is to see more classrooms in each state having the framework of universal design for learning. So our next few weeks is going to be all about that. I like to change it and say it's UDI instead of UDL. So that's a new acronym. UDI to me means Universal Design for Inclusion. And I think that's going to be a hook that we can have other teachers, other parents, administrators, school board members rally behind the framework of how do we make sure that we're presenting lessons and concepts in a variety of ways, that we have a variety of ways for kids to show us what they've learned, and that we keep kids motivated and engaged. If we can accomplish those three things, it's going to have a huge effect on every student sitting in that classroom, right? So I'm excited. Lissa says, I have in the past a lot of involvement, but don't have any this year. And way to go, Lissa. Yes. And it's like, life changes and it's really challenging, and sometimes it's like, I just have to pull back. But think about the connections and the friends, the allies that you can make. And so you can be on this journey with more than yourself, which can be a really lonely path. Think like a marketer, right? Think about your story, how you're going to have your message to different people. And then join things that are already there instead of creating more separate kinds of communities, separate groups, separate organizations. Let's see how we can start working more with all the parents in the school. And I think it will make a huge difference. I know that when we have larger groups of parents, we have seen important change in our country. So we can start doing this now on this path to really realizing inclusive education for everybody. So next week, my show is going to be on Wednesday because I have a conflict on Thursday. So next week, Wednesday at noon Mountain Time, we'll be here and we're going to be talking about UDI, Universal Design for Inclusion. And we're going to get down into some nitty-gritty things of how we make this really happen versus, oh, it sounds great as a philosophy or a theory, but how are we really going to do it? So let me check. So Lissa says, thanks for all the great ideas, Charmaine. You're welcome, welcome. Thanks to you guys for being here because it's so nice to be able to have conversations. And so I appreciate you guys being here. If you are interested in our private membership group, just type the word group in the comments. And until next Wednesday, I'm Charmaine Thaner. I'm passionate about helping you become an even more effective advocate for your child so they can be safer, happier, and learning each day in school. So until next week, I shall see you then. Take care.